In my Bible reading this week, I've been in Numbers 14. The context is the 12 leaders, one from each of the tribes of Israel, has gone in to check out the land that God had promised to give to Israel. And the report came back that the land was great. It was just awesome. It was a good land. It was flowing with milk and honey. It was beautiful and productive. Everything that God had promised that it would be. But the report also came back that the strength and the size of the people who were currently occupying the land was overwhelming. 10 of the guys reported that Israel would be unable to conquer the land because of the size of the people who were living there now, that it was hopeless and that they should all just turn around and go back to Egypt. Two of the leaders, Joshua and Caleb, told the people that God was able to give them what he had promised and that they were to press forward and to trust God. Well, the people didn't listen to Joshua and Caleb, and they complained to Moses, complained that God had brought them out to the wilderness and that they were all going to die there. And because of this sin of not trusting God, that whole generation of people, 20 years and older, would end up dying in the wilderness. They would wander in the wilderness for 40 years and they would die there. And now the verse that caught my attention is verse 33 of chapter 14. And your children will be like shepherds wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. In this way, they will pay for your faithlessness until the last of you lies dead in the wilderness. So the children of these adults, although they will eventually make it into the land when they're adults, they will still feel the difficult consequences for their parents' unfaithfulness, for their dad and mom's sins. Maybe you've heard the definition of sin, that sin is missing the mark, like an arrow falling short of a target. And that's an okay definition, but I think it actually falls short of giving us the full extent of the horror and folly of sin. An arrow falling short of a target, well, no big deal. You've missed the target, you just get another arrow and try again. But what if you've set up a target in your backyard and you shoot an arrow, and because of the carelessness in how you've set the target up and not thinking of where that arrow will go if you miss the target, the arrow goes wide right into the front yard and hits your son or daughter playing in the sandbox. That is what this text in Numbers 14 reminds us about sin when it says, in this way, your children will pay for your faithlessness. Your sin, the arrows that you randomly fling, whether it's your words, your actions, or your careless neglect, your failure to follow God, your sin has the potential to hurt those around you. And those closest to you are the ones who often get hit with the consequences of your arrows falling short. Now, I know I've ended these the earlier video lessons by saying, I hope what I have shared from my Bible reading has been an encouragement to you. And you might ask, Bob, how can this lesson on sin and this graphic picture of arrows sticking out of the backs of children be an encouragement? Well, the same day I read from Numbers 14, I also was reading from John 5. And Jesus, in verse 13 of that chapter, says this to a man that he has made whole. Jesus says to him, now you are well, so stop sinning, or something even worse may happen to you. So here's the encouragement that I took from reading from Numbers 14 and then the same day reading from John 5. Jesus cares enough about me, and Jesus cares enough about you to pick you up when you've fallen short and make you whole. And then to warn you to turn away from the sin that harms you and others. I think of John 3:17, where we read, God sent his Son into the world not to condemn, but to save. And right now, through this lesson, God is seeking to save you from sin. And I think that's a huge encouragement for you to be hearing from Jesus through me right now, to step away from sin. I think that's an encouragement, don't you? James 5:20, the very last verse in the book of James, says, know that whoever brings back a sinner from his wandering will save his soul from death and will cover a multitude of sins. By this lesson, maybe stopping more arrows from hitting unintended targets. Jesus said, stop sinning. That's an encouraging word from Jesus, even if it carries the weight of a warning. And I trust you'd heed this lesson and realize that Jesus didn't come to condemn, but to save. And as you read your Bible, as I hope you will, remember that the Bible is one story that points to Jesus. Don't miss Jesus. He's the one the Bible is all about.